Good morning, everyone, and thank you to the meeting of the Integrated Joint Boards Audit and Performance Committee. I want to introduce the top table here. I'm Councillor Sheila McCole, who's the chair of this committee. To my right is Chief Officer Jackie Pepper of the Health and Social Care Partnership, and to her right is Donna Mitchell, who's the Chief Finance Officer, and to Donna's right is Mark Grant, who is the Finance Manager, and to my left is Jessica Gould, the Clerk of the Committee. It keeps me right on all things to do with the committee running order. If anything goes wrong, I'm going to blame Jess. Can I also welcome Mary O'Connor of Audit Scotland to the meeting today, who's joining us online? And can I ask the clerk to confirm any apologies received, please?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies today from Heather Dunk, Zoe Robertson, and I note that Sandra Auld isn't present yet, but I've not heard from her. So if she joins, I will let you know.
Thank you, Jess. And can I just remind those joining us virtually to use the chat box to attract my attention during the meeting, or raise a hand if you haven't got the chat box function in the Teams link that you have. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest in respect to the business on today's agenda? Nothing in chat. Okay, don't see anything. So can we go to the minutes of the previous meeting of the 27th of October 2025 for approval? Are there any matters arising from the minutes or any questions? Jackie?
It's just a matter arising on it's page 8 of the pack. There under items clinical care governance, there was a question around mental health and learning disability services, and I'd indicated that there'd be a quarterly update provided to the IJB on the 17th of December. That quarterly update, it was not provided because it had not gone through the NHS Tayside governance process at that point in time, but I am aware that there is now a closure report that will be made available to the IJB as soon as that has been considered through the NHS governance processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We'll take a note of that. So if there are no other issues or matters arising, can we agree the minutes of the last meeting, please? Okay, so now move on to the action points update. Yes, the item 5.2, the content of the whistleblowing report is to be shared with members at the next meeting. That will come under private papers at the end of this meeting. But I also seem to recall at our last meeting that we did discuss that we could consider setting some performance targets for ourselves, particularly for our own internal performance targets that we monitor. And so I realise that it's perhaps a bit premature to do those before we've finalised the budget settlements, as that might have an impact on how we manage things going forward. But could I ask that we can add that into the action points update, and if we can get a date from officers in due course as to when they think they can bring this to the committee again. Is everybody in agreement with that? Okay, thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is item number 4, and the key strategic performance report for Q1. And can I ask Chris Jolly to present that report, please? Chris.
Microphone working. Thank you. Good morning, Chair. Morning, Committee. This performance report is a Q2 report, but you'll see that much of the data included in the report takes us up to the end of Q3, so to the end of December. As such, this is effectively an early Q3 report. The next committee meeting is in June, and will be quickly followed by the APR in July, which will cover the full year to the end of March, as you would expect. As we look forward to next year, we'll try to address the scheduling issues that we've experienced this year, which means that this report is a hybrid of Q2 and Q3. Moving to highlights within the report, unmet need has reduced substantially across 2025 compared to 2024, with an average of around 370 hours per week compared to almost 990 hours per week in the previous year. So a really substantial improvement. The need for emergency hospital care has, however, continued to rise across the period, with increasing trends seen for A&E attendance and A&E admissions. This isn't impacting the amount of time people spend in hospital, however, with unscheduled bed days and average length of stay both seen to reduce over the period. This is supported also by a continuous downward trend in delayed discharges over the period, and a continued high level of performance in respect to discharge without delay. Mental health A&E attendances have trended down slightly over the period, which is good, despite a rise which was seen in early 25-26. These types of variations can be seen seasonally, and so it's good to see that despite that increase in the early part of the financial year, the rate now is still lower than it was at the same time the previous year, hence the improving trend. Mental health occupied bed days have remained stable, with increases seen earlier in the year now having reversed. Within the report, additional information has been included for the split of delayed discharges across mental health services. Increases, which was a request of the committee, increases in delayed discharge and GAP have driven an overall increase, but it's important to note that these affect a very small number of people, and so movements, so relatively small movements, single figure movements, can make a significant difference in the shape of the charts. Demand across community services is very high, but despite this, waiting times have now stabilised. The committee requested that substance use be included within this report alongside mental health. The committee will be pleased to see that in this report. And the last thing I was going to mention in terms of highlights is around feedback from the people that use our services, which is extremely important to how we shape the delivery of services as we go forward. The ratings provided through Care Opinion have declined slightly when compared to the same period last year, but it's important to note that reduction still indicates extremely good performance, as the reduction shown it still indicates that the lowest of all ratings was 4.2 out of 5. So it has reduced, but only very slightly from what had been seen previously, and still remains at a very high level. Happy to pause there and take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Chris. Has anyone in the room got any questions for Chris on this report? Sandra?
It's okay. My question, assuming it will relate to the report, and I'm going back to our development session on Friday, where we had said, I think with regard to OT services, that there were 600 people currently waiting, and I just wondered if that did impact on unmet need.
Hi there. Yes, thanks very much for the question. So the unmet need figure ostensibly relates to care at home, and our ability to cater for people's assessed need. So others would be better placed to describe the content of that need. Undoubtedly, occupational therapy will be part of the service, but perhaps more in terms of a reablement aspect as opposed to the ongoing care it needs. So it will have an impact, but I think despite that, we've still been able to reduce the level of unmet needs substantially. I wasn't at the briefing on Friday, so maybe others are able to contribute further.
Thank you, Chris. Jackie.
I think what it would be helpful to do is, because that was being spoken about in general terms about looking to do some transformational work and redesigning around occupational therapy. But I wonder if we could just clarify some of the detail around that, because I think it's about the length of wait and the number of waits for an OT assessment. So it wouldn't necessarily prevent the provision of a care service on top of that, but obviously that it's something that we'd want to reduce, Bernie. But I think we need to get the detail of that and provide that to you separately, if that's okay, because Zoe's not here this morning. Thanks.
No, thank you very much. That's fine. I appreciate it. Perhaps wouldn't prevent a package, but I'm just thinking OT in the community. That's maybe equipment and that would support that person. So no, thanks very much.
Thank you. Martin?
Question that may or not be able to answer, but is home detox for substance use included in care at home? Because sometimes you can.
I would need to revert to Jane Menzies in respect to that.
Thank you. No, those figures wouldn't be included in the care at home figures that you're seeing today.
Okay, thank you. David?
Thank you. The charts on 2 and 3 have an upward trend that's for A&E attendances and admissions from A&E. Would that be primarily down to the ageing population in Perth and Kinross?
Yes, I think you're onto it there. I think the ageing population creates additional levels of frailty. So what happens is as people age and frailty becomes more of an issue, the likelihood and propensity for crisis to happen increases, and so they'll tip over. I think the positive thing to take out of that, however, is that they're not spending long periods of time in hospital thereafter. The reablement support that they require is able to be delivered at an increased rate from what we saw back in 2024. So yes, we would like that trend to go in a different direction, but we're up against it in respect to the realities of having an older and frailer population.
I think Jackie would like to say a few words on that, please.
Yeah, thanks. And as Chris says, we across Perth and Kinross, as you know, the ageing population and the increasing frailty, but there is some interesting data in here about what does that mean in Perth City and the drivers for that. So we're engaged already in discussions with our acute colleagues about what we might need to do in Perth City to begin to drive that down, because it's not just all older people, it's all ages, and actually it's quite interesting to have a look at the data when you begin to interrogate it differently. But it is an area of concern, I would suggest, in terms of that continuing increase and something that we would need to reverse. So our discussions with what we call our whole system leadership group is beginning to focus in on that. So the route out of hospitals across the whole of Perth and Kinross, but we know that we've got particular drivers here in the city where you've got a district hospital accessible on your doorstep, if you like, or not too far away. So we need to begin to look at that and explore other measures to keep people out of hospital. So that's certainly something that will be a focus going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Jackie. And Sandra, welcome to the meeting. Sorry you had difficulty joining this morning, but we're on item 4.1 at the moment. I don't know if anybody online now has any questions. I don't see anything in the chat box. See anything? Okay. So in that case, if there are no further questions or comments, can we agree the recommendations in the report, please? Thank you very much. We now come to item 4.2, which is the Transformation Programme Update. And again, can I ask Chris Jolly, the Programme Manager, to present the report, please? Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chair. So the Transformation Programme continues to evolve to meet the rising demand financial pressures and long-term sustainability challenges across health and social care in Perth and Kinross. Phase 1 delivered significant service improvements, and I've referred to some of those in the previous performance report. And the programme now moves into Phase 2 with a strengthened portfolio management approach to ensure robust governance and alignment with strategic priorities. In Phase 1, the highlights include the unmet need changes that we commented on just a moment or two ago. Projects forming the Quality, Safety, Efficiency and Prescribing Programme contributed to significant financial savings. Complex care transformation created an integrated team, which is now referred to as SCOPE, introduced overnight responder service, achieved around £45,000 of savings in that respect, improved transition and progressed core and cluster developments to provide independence for people. Primary care mental health created greater access to mental health support through GP practices across the whole of Perth and Kinross. As I say, we move into Phase 2 now with the development of a person-centred approach to rehabilitation and reablement carried over from Phase 1 into Phase 2. It's a longer term project that, and so that carries on into Phase 2. Further elements of Phase 2 relate to projects around dementia and enhancing capacity in the community, particularly around psychiatry of old age. Learning disability services and a review around the delivery of those. Older people's day services is at options appraisal phase. And these projects will next be reviewed at the Health and Social Care Partnership Transformation Board on the 18th of March. I'm happy to pause there and take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. Do we have any questions in the report, please? David.
Not so much a question, thanks, Chair, but the one about the dementia and enhancing capacity in the community would be good to get a steer on that as it progresses, because it obviously has got implications for providers in the community, whether it be care at home or care homes. So it'd be good to be involved in discussions about the scope of that, and likewise with the learning disability services, if that affects external providers as well. Thanks very much.
Want to go back in on that? Okay. I think I'd probably just like to add a wee comment there about capacity in the community, or just across the board. It seems to be particularly stretched at the moment, and there's something I think that we need to maybe think about how we have a look at how our providers that provide care at home and provide other services are able to cope, because I know just from both anecdotal and personal experience that right now it's a stretch for an awful lot of providers. So what we don't want is things to fall behind and all the good work somehow unravel because of that. So maybe we can have a look at that and bring it back. David.
So I'm on the workforce steering group, and we've had discussions for about a year now about the implications of this. So with Zoki being in post as the workforce lead, we've had really good discussions about the impact that the workforce has, or the struggles of the workforce in recruiting across the whole sector, whether it's internal within the partnership, NHS, or with providers. So discussions are ongoing. It's involved in the plan, your action plan that Zoki's pulled together. And then earlier on, Chris has mentioned about tech getting used for supported living. So at the supported living forum, we've had discussions with the providers about how the pilots went within the partnership. So we've had discussions with them so they know about it, and if there's any packages of care that can be supported appropriately. So tech's a way forward, not for every service, but tech could be a way of alleviating the issues of workforce issues. Thanks.
Apologies. Right now there seems to be a greater challenge at the moment than has been previously, and at some point you know, I suppose I'm concerned that might then start becoming a risk to not just to the people that we support, but also to the way we deliver our services. So it's maybe something we can have a look at and bring back to the next committee if that's possible. We put it down in an action plan. I'm not quite sure of the wording, what the action should be, but I think it's something that should give us all a little bit of cause of concern. Martin?
Thanks, just for clarification, and the Learning Disability Service Review, are we taking on board the new strategy, the mental health and learning disability strategy under the single leadership when we're doing this review?
Absolutely, it needs to be in alignment with that. And I know we've had discussions around that emerging NHS Tayside organisational design. And just to say for Audit and Performance Committee members, the IJB development session on the 13th of March will be around a briefing in relation to how that's being taken forward, and that'll be led by the Chief Executive of NHS Tayside. But I think it's fair to say that it needs to be in alignment with that. But there also needs to be that focus on what's the local dimension and the local context in which we're working here. Yeah, thanks.
Ernie?
Sorry, thank you. Just to come back on when we're referring to capacity in the community, I know following the strategic planning group meeting, I had got back to David. I'm sorry, I'm trying to look to see what his surname was, but we were talking then with regard to the situation for respite for unpaid carers, and it was the issue that seems to keep coming up is there is not the availability, and I'm referring now to the care home sector for the unpaid carer to get a break. They seem to be, whether it is that they're full or we're actually aware that there are vacancies, but that for some reason, you know, the unpaid carers are not able to get that break. I had gone back to David to say, I really think that we need to look at that. I'm thinking about, again, I know I keep mentioning it, but the right to breaks for carers. And, you know, this is coming down the line. And if we are saying that there is a right to break and they're looking for, you know, a week to get away or something, but there isn't the capacity. But I really do think we need to look at that in relation to our care homes. Thank you.
I think that's a very good point, Bernie. And I think if we look at the whole capacity, it's the whole system we should be looking at, including what are the dependencies, the consequences, etc. And it's maybe something to come forward with the risk register in the future. But we can make that assessment, I think, in the next month or so. Okay, I don't see anybody online, is there? Okay, so I have no questions from anybody online. So in that case, if there are no further questions or comments, can we agree the recommendations in the report, please? Thank you very much, everyone. So now we go to item 5.1, Partnership Improvement Plan Update, and can I ask Phil Gerard, the Governance and Risk Coordinator, to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair and committee members. The report presented to you today provides an update on the Partnership Improvement Plan and provides assurance on the progress made since the last update to this committee back in October last year. The report highlights where actions have now been completed, where good progress continues, and where further work is required. Since we last reported this back in October, I haven't added any new actions to the plan. There are 7 actions now marked as completed, including some key items relating to premises and property, the sustainability of commissioned service providers, and the refresh of the Tayside risk management strategy. We're also marking the risk maturity internal audit, which was considered by this committee last year, as completed. All 7 actions contained within that have been concluded. I must say though, my apologies, the report is not correct today. It states that 5 actions are read. There was a very late update to some of the premises and property audit actions. You'll see on Appendix 1 that there's only 2 red actions remaining now, as opposed to 5 as stated in the report. This late change, unfortunately, hasn't quite made it to the report, so apologies for that. What that means is there are 11 actions open on the report, majority of which are assessed as green. More number are red, 2, as I just mentioned, and they relate to premises and property work stream. These will require further continued oversight and engagement with IGB's partners to bring them back on track. But overall, partnership continues to make steady and consistent progress across the improvement plan. We regularly review it and we bring it back to every meeting, ensuring that the committee has ongoing visibility of these actions and their achievements as we continue to work towards full delivery of the actions. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Phil. It's always good to have fewer red, I think. Are there any questions in the room, first of all, please? Councillor Longwood?
Yeah. Is it possible for the committee to have some background on the reds? I mean, I don't want to focus just on the reds because there's lots of good news in there, but
Just want a bit more detail. Okay. We've read that, please.
Hoping the Chief Officer could write some update. There may be an update on this, another update that hasn't quite made it to the report.
Thank you very much. In relation to the, I'm going to go in reverse order, if that's okay. The internal audit in terms into premises and property, there have been some changes in NHST side with a review of the governance around estates and capital planning with the asset management group has been I'm trying to remember the name of the group that's replaced it, but it's something like Strategic Investment Group or some, I think that's what it's called. So the HSAP is a core member of that, and at the moment that's designated as the Chief Officer, so there is direct involvement in that. But there's been a process undergone in the NHST side in terms of the changes of the governance. And we've also sought representation on the corporate investment group for the local authority because we were absent from that. So that's now been arranged. So although some of this is sitting at red at this point in time, we're making progress on that. So it's not that nothing is happening. But the recommendation there to explore the establishment of a forum to collaboratively and proactively plan for shared use of the whole estate requires the whole system to be working on that. But excuse me, and certainly that's a feature of the discussions that happen at both the council's executive leadership team and the NHST side chief executives team. So that's definitely under discussion. And then reversing back up the way, that was around the development of strategic plans both in terms of older people services and adult services around the premises requirements for there. So that's still underway. I don't know if Jane wanted to say anything. Zoe's not here at this point in time, but I think you'll see that threaded through our transformation programs as well.
I'd agree, and to that end, probably not much to add. But there's a number of programs of work that are taking place where we are looking at how things can be delivered most effectively across Tayside. So that means that the discussion probably requires to extend a little further. And as we come to conclusion, those details, as Jackie said, will come into the discrete plans for your consideration.
And I would just like to add a little bit on there that when we do discuss property and premises at NHS board meetings, I frequently do request that they consider the whole of the public estate, not just the NHS public estate. So I'm quite sure that they're paying attention. Whether they're doing anything about it is debatable, but at least they know that they should look at everything in the whole of the public estate. But we already have quite a good example of how we share public estate here just by Pillar House, where we do the vaccination centre there, and there are other considerations there. So I think there's emergence of a really strong way forward. I don't know if it's way forward, really strong understanding that there's a wider public estate particularly in our rural areas where we need to be able to tap into that. And that's a responsibility in both Perth and Kinross Council, but also on the NHST side. Is that okay? Does that answer your questions, David? You want to come back in?
Yeah, thank you. It's good to hear that there's been progress being made on the estate issues, and generally the whole report is good news. And so thank you very much for all the effort that's gone into this.
Thank you, David. Jackie, do you want to come back in?
Thank you very much for those comments. I think it's a related matter, but not outlined in this partnership improvement plan. But I think it's worthy of note for the committee that we have very much closer working relationships with our planning colleagues in the local authority, particularly around the development of the local development plan and LDP3, thinking about the future needs of the population. So although this is focused on premises, we have to recognise the growing population and housing development across Perth and Kinross and thinking ahead for the next 10 to 15 years. So we are engaged in those discussions much more than I think we've been before. Thanks.
Yeah, it's good to hear there's a lot of strategic thinking going on. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I don't see anyone else with a question to ask. Okay, well, in that case, if there are no further questions or comments, can we agree to note the update, please? Agreed. Okay. So now we move on to the item 5.2, the strategic risk management update. And can I ask Phil again to present this report? Phil?
Thank you, Chair. The report provides an overview of our current strategic risk position, outlines the work we're undertaking to ensure that the IGB continues to maintain strong and effective risk management arrangements. Today's update includes the latest version of the strategic risk register. It's attached at Appendix 1. The committee will be asked to approve that today. The register continues to contain 6 strategic risks, each of which have been reviewed in detail by the senior management team since the last reporting cycle in September. I draw your attention to the change in scoring for the workforce risk. Various increasing pressures and constraints has resulted in the senior management team increasing the probability of this risk occurring from a 3 to a 4. Moves the residual risk score from a medium yellow rating to a priority 2 high amber risk. The consequences of this means that it will now trigger more frequent monitoring by SMT as required by our local risk management framework. However, it is still within the IGB's agreed risk appetite. Across the remaining risks, we continue to see a largely stable position. Updates provided in the report on new controls, improvement actions, and areas where more work is required. The report also confirms that since we last considered strategic risks, this committee, no operational risks have been escalated for inclusion at a strategic level. Following assurance reviews undertaken by both the NHST side and Perth and Kinross Council. Additionally, you'll note the positive outcome, as I mentioned, in the Partnership Improvement Plan report of the recent risk maturity audit. Pleased to report all 7 actions identified in the audit have now been completed. An internal audit has confirmed that substantial assurance is now in place. The action plan is attached to Appendix 2 of the report for your information. And finally, just to conclude, the report mentions that the Tayside-wide risk management strategy was approved by the IGB, reinforcing a consistent and collaborative approach across all 3 Tayside IGBs. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Phil. Do we have any questions for Phil on the strategic risk register? Martin, and then David.
SRO4 that there's supposed to be a sustainability survey following. Is that here? February 2026. SRO4, primary care services.
Thank you. Bill, are you able to that one, or Jackie's going to take it, I think.
I think you're referencing that the intention to carry out a sustainability survey in February 26 in terms of GP premises. I think what that's saying is that it's being carried out just now. It's not that we were going to bring that back here in February. So we'll just confirm that that is actually being completed in February. Thanks.
So within primary care, my understanding is that Angus has the overall responsibility to come up with a primary care strategy, right? And I know they had two C premises that they're now trying to shift into a put it to tender because they're too difficult. I'm just double checking. We don't have any 2C premises in Perth. But that would then have to fall into that.
And certainly on that part, I can confirm we definitely don't have any 2C practices in Perth and Kinross.
I should probably say, based on the comments before about working on the LDP3, and certainly this is an issue that, particularly because there are a number of newer developments in Perth and Kinross, again, the Health Board is aware, and we need to make sure that that engagement is not just with the Health and Social Care Partnership, but the Health Board with our local development plan to make sure that we take cognizance of growing population in terms of making facilities in a master plan somehow. But that conversation is ongoing in terms of provision or space for GP premises if required.
With the advent of these developments, the just past one going through Bridge Iron, that seems to be, obviously there's no facilities there for chemists or nothing there for doctors, surgeries, but with the advent of these new builds, is that going to then impact on NRAC eventually?
Well, I'm not an expert in NRAC, but I'm guessing the population changes will at some point have an impact. That be correct, Donna? Yeah. But I think the real question there is making sure that the master plans and the local development plans take cognizance of these increased populations, increased developments, to try and make at least some recognition that we need to consider primary care requirements.
I actually thought that should be in local plan and development, if they're awarding a new house build, then they could keep firing people in, but if you've no surgeries, you've no chemists, you've very little else. All we're going to have is more people coming in, more people putting pressure on the hospitals. So I'd be a bit joined up thinking somewhere.
I couldn't agree more, Martin, and I raised that very point at the Health Board meeting last week. So, but I think it's not, at the point I'm trying to make here, it's not just the Health and Social Care Partnership that needs to engage with the local development planning. It needs to be the whole system, including the NHS Board. And I think those conversations are not, well, they are, they're taking place, or they will be taking place fairly soon, but we'll be keeping a close eye on those. Sandra, you want to have, oh, sorry, David, Dave, you're first. No, this is Dave.
Sorry, SRO3 workforce, just got a quick question, just following on from my comments earlier. I know we've got the workforce plan, which I'm involved in, coming at the March IGB. this risk register based on workforce, is that purely for internal HSCP staff, or is it the whole health and social care sector?
The purpose of it is to assess the workforce implications across all the workforce that we rely on. So yes, it will be external to the BKC.
Thank you. Sandra, I think you're next. You have a question?
Yeah, yeah, a question and sort of a comment. Just looking at the risk matrix and taking into account the financial challenges that are being that are being undergone just now, might we not have expected this to look worse than it does, and some of the kind of general environment to be differently reflected in this?
I'm quite happy to. I think, Sandra, while the financial considerations are still, or the financial matters are still under consideration, it'd be a bit premature to adjust this accordingly. I'm guessing, and I'm looking at our finance people in at Phil here, but I think once we get clarity after the budget setting processes from both the local authority and the health board, then we'll have a better understanding of what the implications of that will be, and if the risk matrix needs to be adjusted accordingly, and or any other performance measures or any other type of service delivery we have that will be reflected in that case. And I don't know if we'll be ready. Hopefully in June we can get a clearer update on what the budget implications will be.
Okay.
I'm getting nods from everybody else. I'm assuming that's the correct answer.
Okay. I guess it was just trying to get an understanding of this as a kind of gauge of sensitivity. But okay, thank you for that.
That's fine, Sandra. Thank you, David.
Thank you. It's just a comment. I mean, I think looking at the risk register matrix, we should all be pretty nervous. In terms of workforce, because of the general decline in economic activity across the whole economy, we might benefit from that. People might be more keener to come and work for us. So it might not all, there might be a silver lining in there.
Not sure if I can. So I don't see anyone else with their hand up from online or in the room. So in that case, if there are no further questions or comments, can we agree the recommendations in the report? And do we have to improve something as well here? Okay, so now we move on to, so I just want to say that the recommendations include the approval of the strategic risk register as set out in Appendix 1. So that's now approved. We now move on to item 5.3, which is the internal audit progress report. And can I ask Jackie Clark to present the report, please? Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, Chair. This is a very brief report, just to highlight to you that the lead partner internal audit is in progress with the cross-organisational leadership for this assignment being provided by Dundee City Council, and we continue to work across all three IJBs with this piece of work. And we're looking to commence the performance framework internal audit within the coming weeks in order to meet the June committee deadline. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Jackie. Have we any questions for Jackie? Don't see anybody online or in the room. So in that case, can we agree the recommendations or the progress made in the report, please? Can be agreed. Thank you. Thank you, Jackie. We now move on to the annual audit plan, item 5.4. Can I ask Mark Grant, the Finance Manager, and Mary O'Connor of Audit Scotland to present the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm happy to introduce today the Perth and Kinross Integrated Joint Board Draft Annual audit plan for 25-26 for your information. As the chair says, I'd like to welcome Mary O'Connor from Audit Scotland, senior auditor, who who will join online and take you through the key aspects of this report. So if I can just hand over to Mary now to take you through that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. Firstly, apologies from Rachel. She has a conflicting audit committee this morning. So yeah, I am going to take you on a quick tour through the draft annual audit plan. So first up, page 91 of your pack, that outlines that Rachel and the rest of the audit team are independent of the IJB. That's that bit. The next bit on page 92, paragraph 5, that sets out the scope of the audit and covers all the areas that we look at. So it's not just the accounts that we audit, but we also audit the wider scope. So we have to offer a conclusion on the wider scope of the audit. There is a bullet point missing in the draft that you currently have in this section, and that sets out all of the wider scope. That will be included in the final version when we pull that together and pass it on to yourselves and publish it on the Audit Scotland website. If we move on then to page 93 of your report and paragraph 9, so that is the bit about fraud. So the risk, we have to look at fraud or the likelihood of fraud. So in line with previous years, I will pause in a minute and ask the members of the committee if they've got anything that they would like to bring to our attention. I'll just note that we do this again. We will pause again when we present the annual audit report in September. So I'll just pause now. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mary. Councillor Illingworth, you want to say something here?
Yeah, I've got nothing to report. So.
Thank you.
Silence would have, I think silence would have sufficed. Thank
That's
you.
okay.
Carry on, Mary. Thank you.
Right. If we move on then with the plan. So if we look at the audit of the annual accounts, so Exhibit 1 on page 94. So that takes you through the materiality levels that we use. So materiality is a level where we would ask for an error to be adjusted. So we set that at 2% of gross expenditure. And performance materiality, that's where if we found an error above that rate, we would need to consider carrying out additional audit work. Just like to point out that the performance materiality figure, that's set at the higher end because we don't, because of the quality of the accounts in the previous years. If we'll move on. So Exhibit 2 on page 96, that sets out the risk and material misstatement within the audit. So the management override of controls is a overriding risk that is a presumed risk from the auditing standards, and the audit response to that is mainly to look at the auditor assurances that we get from the auditors of NHS Tayside and Perth and Kinross Council. So currently Rachel is appointed auditor for all three bodies, so we will be writing to ourselves to get that assurance. Moving on, page 97 looks at the wider scope. So that sets out the 4 areas. So financial management, financial sustainability, vision leadership and governance, and the use of resources to improve outcomes. So we will look at all of them and provide a conclusion on them within the annual audit report. There is one area to highlight, financial sustainability. The IGB have highlighted the uncommitted reserves will be exhausted in 25-26, so we will review the progress against the financial recovery plan and the financial monitoring taken to the IGB in the year. And again, we'll report that as part of the annual audit report at the end of the accounts process. Moving on, the reporting arrangements, timetable and fee. So last year we pulled the signing of the accounts forward to before the 30th of September. So thank you very much for agreeing to the extra committee to allow that to happen. We do plan to continue signing off before the 30th of September. And I believe we have the committee in the diary all ready to do that. Audit fee, I note that that's in the next paper, so I'm not going to say anything more on that other than to note that it is once again the minimum baseline fee that has been proposed. So the final section of the report just touches on internal audit, and that whilst we don't rely on internal audit for any of the audit work, we do obviously take account of the work that internal audit have done, and we would kind of take on board their reports as they arrive. And lastly, audit quality. Audit Scotland always welcomes feedback, so if you have any feedback, I'm sure Rachel or the team would be more than happy to take that on board. So with that, I am going to stop. I'm happy to take any questions. So back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mary. Can you just remind me which section did you say there's a missing bullet point on? I think you said at the beginning one of the sections had a missing bullet point.
Yes, so it is on page 92, so the scope of the audit, paragraph 5. So it sets out the audit of the financial statements, the opinion on other information, remuneration report, best value. There should be one in there. There should be a bigger one on the wider scope. So that will be included in the finalised report when we give it back to you.
Thank you. Can you maybe just send us a separate email with that detail so we can include it in the minute, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Now, have we any questions for Mary? So Councillor Illingworth and then Martin, please.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any differences between this year's draft plan and last year's draft plan?
The answer to that in a nutshell is not really. The IJBs it's fairly, okay, not much has changed in the IJB world, and certainly for the audit of the IJB. So it is a very similar plan to the previous years.
Thank you. And Martin?
Thanks for the report. It's in the wider scope and best value on page 97. When we talk about use of resources to improve outcomes, can we determine what resources are? Because if resources are including staffing, then we don't have staff, and the staff belong to the council and NHS Tayside. It's welcome that we're working in communities with partners in communities, but where I get slightly confused is the use of resources and staffing being resources. The purpose, or one of the purposes of IJB, is actually to direct staffing. And we can direct NHS Tayside, and we can direct a person Kinross Council. So I'm a wee bit confused on resources, but I spend my life confused, so don't worry about it.
Thank you, Martin. Mary, can you address that one?
Yeah, totally. Yes, we do recognise that obviously the IJB don't employ staff direct, and you are dependent on the staffing within NHS Tayside and Perth and Kinross Council. When we look at this, we kind of look at the performance outcomes. So the report, you've just reviewed your Q2 performance. So we look at the year-end report it's presented in August, isn't it, 26? So we look at that and kind of how the use of the resources as a global, how that is then impacting on the on the needs of service users and continuous improvement.
Thanks, Mary. Is that okay, Martin? Does that answer your question? I think Jackie would like to come in here.
I suppose really just to think about the IGB has a strategic plan, and then in terms of looking at how that strategic plan is being implemented, uses directions to both the council and NHST side in terms of its delivery. So I suppose in that wider sense, resources would be, and the use of resources would be in terms of how the IGB is directing, as you say, Martin, the local authority and NHST side through the Health and Social Care Partnership to meet its strategic aims, and how well are we achieving that? Is that right, Mary?
Yes, in a nutshell. So you put it more eloquently than I have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I hope that gives you a fuller answer, Martin, or has that raised another one?
It gives you the fuller answer, but I'm also I'm interested in the work we do with partners and communities, the partners in communities. And are we working with the third sector, are we working with voluntary organisations to create a strategic plan? Because that's important that we engage with our communities and partners to achieve it.
Couldn't agree more. So if there are no further questions or comments, can we agree the draft annual audit plan, please? Thank you. Now we move on to my least favourite paper, the external audit fee for 2025-26. And can I ask Mark Grant to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to introduce to you today the 25-26 audit fees paper for the Perth and Kinross IGB. So this report seeks approval from the Audit and Performance Committee for the proposed 25-26 external audit fees proposed by Audit Scotland. The proposed fee outlined in the paper is £35,480, which is a 4.4% overall increase in comparison to 24-25. The proposed audit fees are underpinned by Audit Scotland's fee strategy, which reflects two key principles. One, the audit fees should be set with the objective of recovering the full cost of audit work in each sector, and two, the cost of the audit should not depend on the identity or location of the auditor. Mary O'Connor is online today to take any questions, so I will pass over to Mary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Do you have any other comment to make on this?
Not really, just other than to say that it is the baseline fee, and we do not propose to levy any additional fees on the IGB. So it is the baseline fee that we are proposing for the IGB.
Okay, thank you. Is any questions? David Illingworth, please.
Thank you. You're proposing an increase of 4.4, but inflation is slightly lower than that. So what's the difference for, what's the reason for the variation?
Mary?
Okay. Yeah, so the audit fees have gone up by 4.3, 4.4%. There are three components to that. So there's the auditor remuneration, which has increased by 3.8% based on the Audit Scotland Pay Award. Audit Scotland deferred applying the employer's national insurance increase from April 25. So that's a one-time increase this year. Additionally, legislation requires Audit Scotland to break even each year. We have identified efficiency savings of 2.2 million in our budget to offset some of the increases. So hope that helps.
Thank you, Mary. I think this is maybe a question for our own internal people. I'm not sure, Mary, but this talks about the baseline fee. Presumably that gives some scope for additional fees to be incurred by the IGB. Can I have some indication of any additional fees that were incurred during the current financial year?
I can confirm there were none.
Well, that's very good news to hear, and I hope we'll have exactly the same answer for this coming year. Thank you very much. So if there are no other questions or comments, can we approve the proposed external audit fee for 2025-26, subject to Audit Scotland approval? Great, everybody, thank you very much. And now we move on to item 6.1 on the agenda, clinical and care governance assurance. And can I ask Aaron Singh, the strategic lead for children, families and justice, to present the report? Aaron, I think you're online. Oh.
Thank you, Chair. I understand Hamish is also online, but is struggling to get access to his mic. So, Chair, this is a regular assurance report that's provided to committee in relation to the work of the Clinical and Care Professional Governance Forum that looks at services that are provided under the auspices of the Health and Social Care Partnership. I would draw attention to bullet point 2.4 in the paper, which just notes the change in relation to inpatient mental health and learning disability services and all adult psychiatry services in the future will be reported directly to NHS Governance Committee. So this report in itself, Chair, provides assurance to committee that the assurance processes that we have in place are working well. There are regular reports that are provided both to Tayside and also to Tayside NHS and also to Perth and Kinross Scrutiny Performance Committee in relation to assurance, and as noted in section 4.2 there, reasonable assurance was provided to both those forums on the date specified on the 3rd of December 24 and also on the 20th of November 24 as well. The minutes to those meetings are provided as well for committees steward as well, Chair. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Aaron. Are there any questions for Aaron on this report, please? Jackie?
It was really just, I think you may have made the equivalent of a verbal typo. Did you mean 2025, not 2024, Aaron?
Yes, I did. Apologies.
Oh, you did say 24.
Sorry.
It's okay, no worries.
Thank you.
That just shows that everybody's paying attention. Thank you. I don't see any questions either in the room or online. So in that case, if there are no further questions or comments, can we agree the recommendations in this report, please? Okay, and so now we move on to item 7. There's 2 bits of information, or the Audit and Performance Committee work plan for 2025-25. I presume that's a physical typo. 25-26 is included for information. And also item 8, we have the date of the next meetings for noting. Before we conclude this part of the business and move on to the private session, I would like the committee to note that our Chief Officer, Jackie Pepper, is retiring soon, and this will be her last meeting of attending the Audit and Performance Committee. I would like to give Jackie my personal thanks for her support since I've become a councillor, long before I came on this committee as well, and for the exemplary work she's done with the Health and Social Care Partnership, and indeed representing Perth and Kinross Health and Social Care Partnership at the Health Board, which I've been able to see firsthand. I want to wish Jackie every enjoyment in her retirement. That's probably say a little bit envious of her, to be fair. But I just want to give a vote of thanks, and hopefully the rest of the committee will join me in giving that vote of thanks to Jackie.
Yep, here.
I will open the floor if anyone wants to make any other comments at this time.
Just to say thank you very much. I wasn't expecting that, but I just looking at the quality of the information that's in this, And although I'm leaving in April, I'm absolutely certain that this work will continue in the quality that that's before you today. So look forward to seeing that from a distance. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Martin?
Happy retirement, Jackie, but the quality of leadership you've shown is reflective in the regard that Perth and Kinross IGB has held through Scotland. Like we're a high achiever, and that's through quality leadership. Enjoy being retired.
Thank you, Martin. I think we'll leave everything else for the IGB meeting. So that concludes the public part of the meeting, and the live recording will now cease. And can I ask anybody who is not required for the private session to leave the meeting now, please?